for coming. It always says recording in progress, and I wonder, what is it recording? But I don't know. So hello, welcome to pre-trip class number 4. And I am so excited because this is like bring your friend to work day. So this is Dawn Campbell, and I've told you guys all about her. She's with Visit Anchorage. And Dawn, you got to start by telling them just a little bit about you personally and how I got to meet you and how we ended up like family.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Can you see my screen now? Let me share.
You guys, yeah, thumbs up if you can see her screen. Everybody's good.
That it's sharing the screen. There we go.
And I'm monitoring the chat while she's talking, guys. We are gonna do, let me tell you this little housekeeping factor. We are gonna do questions. So if you have questions, hold on to them. You can write them in the chat if you want to. And when she gets to the end, because she has a lot, she's gonna cover both this session and next session. That way I'll read them to her and she can get all the, we'll go back to the slides that you had questions on, that sort of thing. So we promise to cover all that for you. Some things she may defer to next class because we have more in a couple of weeks that we're going to be covering as well. And if she knows she's going to be covering it, she'll just defer that for you. Before we leave today, if someone will please remind me to talk about the excursion protection, the $20-$30 click here if you want excursion protection, if you bought that from Shore Group Excursions. I wanted to find out for you what it was covering, and I got an email back so I can read it to you and let you know what that is. I don't know which ones of you got it or not. So just remind me, otherwise I'll forget. And if I do forget, I'll send you an email about it anyway. So we'll get it in for sure. Okay, Dawn, take it away.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. I am so thrilled to be doing this, and Jen is one of my favorite people. Just real quickly how we met. I work for Visit Anchorage, so she was a travel advisor that looked to us for some training, and she was so gung-ho that we invited her up here. And when we invited her up here, my husband and I met her on her first day in Anchorage, decided we're going to take her on a bike ride on the beautiful coastal trail, which I'll show you some photos of. But we went for a bike ride, and by the end we were like, you want to come over for dinner? And then we said, do you want to just stay at our house? And that might sound weird, but Alaskans that is the hospitality that you will find throughout Alaska. And you will find that people are welcoming and friendly, and they want to share our beautiful state with you. So I will say that it's a little unusual because I don't normally feel like I've met someone in another lifetime, but when I met Jen, that's how I felt. So we have very similar personalities, and our husbands seem to be very good friends these days. So anyway, it's really awesome, really quick friendship, and it's super fun that we get the chance to work together and bring you guys up here and really show you what we have in Alaska. So just a little bit about me. Quickly as we start, I'm a lifelong Alaskan. You can see in the top left here, that's a picture of me when I was a baby in the late 70s out in Portage Glacier, which was a big tourist attraction back in the day, back in the 70s and 80s, when the glacier actually came down into the lake and you could see it from the visitor center. That's my mom and dad. They were just kind of hippies that moved to Alaska in the 70s. And my dad, actually, his family has a long history of being in Alaska. My great grandfather was appointed by Teddy Roosevelt as a doctor in the territory of Alaska. And he was, my grandfather was actually born in Nulato, which is on the northern section of the Iditarod Trail. So it's a really remote village out on the Yukon River. Anyway, he grew up here till he was 16, and my father was actually raised in the Seattle area. But that's a whole nother story about history. You can see from these pictures that we just love to get out and enjoy the outdoors. The middle one on top is a picture of my husband and I in Kodiak this fall. We do hunt for wild game, and we eat wild game. So I've been doing that my whole life. We were actually on a hunt in that picture. We love to fish, and I will say I outfish my husband on almost every trip. We have a fishing contest every year on our anniversary in July, and it just happens that I'm from Alaska and he's from Minnesota, so our fish are bigger anyway. This is a picture of my family right here. I have twin daughters that are 26. My youngest is 21. That's my handsome husband there. He just retired from the Air Force after 25 years. This is the newest member of our family, little Brooks. We just got a puppy, so he's 12 weeks old today. And he's a Bichon miniature poodle. And we miss our little guy we lost about a year ago that was 16. Now, my newest hobby, and one of the biggest hobbies probably for all over the state of Alaska, would be flying. So I decided to learn how to fly when I was without a job for a short period of time during COVID. About 6.5 months, I was out. I left Visit Anchorage, not on choice, but because they had to reduce some numbers and figure out how to get through the pandemic. During my time off, instead of being bummed out, I decided that I was going to go learn how to fly an airplane. And somehow, without a job, I convinced my husband that we should buy one. So that's my other new baby right there. That's a Cessna 172. And it is so much fun now. I have my private pilot's license, and I take my husband and we go flying all over the place. So really fun way to get out and see Alaska. And I'll explain a little bit why about that's so important here in this state and why we have so many pilots. So my job as a Visit Anchorage tourism sales manager is really to train and educate travel advisors and tour operators on how to sell trips to Alaska and how not to overpromise or underdeliver. And also we go and talk to consumers at different shows throughout the country. We go to travel and adventure shows and different things like that, and talk to people about their vacation ideas and tell them, what we have to offer. So basically my job, I just talk about Alaska all the time. I don't actually sell anything. I don't have anything to sell people. I just get to talk about my passion, and that is all about Alaska. So Anchorage is the largest city in the state. And a lot of times people say, well, I don't want to go to Alaska and just go to Anchorage. And that's certainly not what we're trying to convince people to do. But there is so much to see and do around Anchorage that when you have a couple days pre or post cruise, or if you're just coming up for a few days and you have a short vacation window, you certainly can base yourself in Anchorage and do day trips from Anchorage where you can actually see an amazing amount of things in South Central Alaska. Now, right here, I'm just kind of circling in the middle of the screen those kind of orangish brown colored buildings. That's the Hotel Captain Cook. We're going to talk about that here in a minute, but it's right in the heart of downtown Anchorage. And then right here, just down lower in the trees, you see another area that we're going to talk about. That's the Captain Cook Monument. So first, what I'd like to do is talk just about where Alaska is. And I do this because I don't know what it is about Americans. We tend to not have the best geography. As far as when I work with Europeans, they know everything about every single country in Europe. But in the US, a lot of times they'll take Alaska and they'll shrink us down into a small little state and stick us out here in a little bubble next to Hawaii. And I won't joke with you about this, but I will say that people oftentimes think we are an island. And so while I know many of you might already know this, we are connected to North America via Canada. So we're part of the continental United States. We are not in the contiguous 48 states, obviously, because Canada separates us. But you can see here the size of Alaska. So Alaska is about 1/5 the size of the contiguous 48 states. So it's a very, very big state. Now here, Anchorage, where you see Anchorage is located, is right down in the south central portion of Alaska. And why that's important, I'll talk to you about here in a second. On the next slide, we're going to show you the different regions of Alaska. So when you take Alaska and split it into regions, and why we do this is because it's such a huge state and it's so very diverse in weather, climate, everything all throughout the state. It's very, very different. Many people cruise this southeast portion. And I'll show you one more map after this that gives you a better idea how that connects through Canada. But the southeast is your inside passage. So that's where you guys are going to be cruising when you cruise southbound from Whittier that you see right here in South Central. Today, we're mostly going to cover things in South Central, and we're going to sneak up into Denali National Park. The great thing about the interior and South Central Alaska is that it's very travelable, and that's because there's roads and railroad that connects those two regions of the state. Now, when you start looking at Southwest Alaska, Kodiak Island, the Aleutian Islands that go out here all the way out past Dutch Harbor, Arctic or far north Alaska, where you see that Nome is the end of the Iditarod Trail. If any of you are familiar, that's the Seward Peninsula that you see here, not to be confused with Seward, the seaport that's on the Kenai Peninsula. And then Uktaagvik, which is the northernmost community in the US, and that is formerly known as Barrow. The native people decided to change it back to their native name. This dotted line that goes from the interior up through the Arctic is the Dalton Highway, and that is how the truckers get to Prudhoe Bay. So if any of you have seen Ice Road Truckers, that is that road that they show on that show. So again, today we're really going to focus on South Central and interior. And I did give Jen some really great tips on some different things to do in Southeast. So I can answer some of those questions for you if you need to, but today we're mostly going to focus on these regions.
And
now,
I shared that with Dawn, just so you know.
You did?
Yeah, in the last excursions class, they got all your tips live.
Perfect. So you see where Anchorage is located here. We're completely surrounded by water. And I'm going to show you another map that shows that a little bit better. This is the Kenai Peninsula. Seward is a seaport for ships, and then Whittier is also a seaport. So that's in Prince William Sound. And it's great because Princess and Holland America both dock in Whittier. All of our other cruise lines dock in Seward. So if you do another trip to Alaska and you decide to use a different line, you may be docking in a different port. Now, the main line that you see here is our Seward Highway. Our down to Homer is the farthest you can go up south on the Kenai Peninsula. Anchorage up through Palmer, Talkeetna, Denali, and Fairbanks, that's the rail belt section of Alaska. So the Alaska Railroad follows that path. Now, I love this map because it's a little bit more detailed, and you can see the Arctic Circle that crosses through Alaska there. So if you go north of the Arctic Circle, especially right around the time when you all are here, you'll actually see the sun never set. If you go all the way up to Barrow, you can take pictures of the sun all day long and see it come down barely close to the horizon and then just go back up. Now that doesn't happen where we are. I mean, we're quite a distance from Anchorage just to Fairbanks here is almost about 356 miles. So that is a very long distance. If you think about how far it is all the way up to Barrow, it's about almost 900 miles if you could drive there, which you can't. But this is the extent of our road systems. And I think this is really important to show because you can see that most of Alaska, really good portion of it, is not accessible by road or rail. Hence why we have so many bush pilots, people that fly here in Alaska, and the ways to get to these places would either be by river systems, by boat, or by airplane. So just a quick overview of Alaska so you get a little bit better understanding. Now, real quick on this map too, you see in southeast, the big star, that's Juneau, that's our capital. And you cannot get to Juneau by road. You can only get there by boat or plane. So there's no way to drive to Juneau. However, you can drive through Canada to Haines or Skagway. You guys will be docking in Skagway. And you see right there, there's a little railroad track you can see that goes up to Carcross in the Yukon territory there. That is the White Pass Yukon Railroad that I mentioned. So really, really neat tour. If you drive to Haines or Skagway on another future trip and you want to drive up the Alcan or something, you can actually take a ferry. You can put your car on a ferry and go to Juneau. So some other options and get into those regions, but just wanted to kind of point that out. There are 2 towns that you can drive to in Southeast, but you have to drive through Canada. Now, Anchorage being located right on the ocean, we have a really it's kind of the best of both worlds. We have 6 mountain ranges that you can see from Anchorage, including Denali on a nice, beautiful, clear day. And Jen witnessed this on a bike ride that we took. We saw Denali, clear as day from Anchorage on the bike trail that we took. But you can also see the Chugach Mountains, the Kenai Mountains, Talkeetna Mountains, the Tordrillo Mountains, and the Alaska Range, and the Aleutian Mountains, which includes some volcanoes. The great thing about Anchorage being located on the ocean is that we have a very mild climate. So I would say it's more of a maritime climate. We don't get the harsh cold that they get in the interior of Alaska in the winter, and we don't get really, really hot in the summer. And when I say really, really hot, you'd be surprised to know that Fairbanks gets close to 100 degrees pretty often in the summer. We never hardly ever see that in Anchorage. So we're averaging, I'll show you some average temperatures here in a minute. So we like to say we have mild weather and extreme fun. And what we mean by that is just that you can really get out and enjoy everything because the environment really allows you to do so. We're much, much drier climate than they are in Southeast Alaska, where they call rain liquid sunshine. So I'm hoping for your cruise that you'll actually get some really nice, beautiful weather in Southeast, but also hoping that you'll get that here in South Central and even up into the interior when you head to Denali. So I like to touch a little bit on our temperature and daylight hours. This is really awesome because people don't know what to expect when they come to Alaska, and we are open year round. So believe it or not, we're getting a lot of people wanting to come here in the winter. So I like to show people, even in one of our coldest months of the year, either December or January, we're still averaging only in the mid 20s. Now that would not be the same as the mid 20s somewhere in like the Midwest where it's really humid because it's very dry here. So this cold is not going to be nearly as bone chilling cold as that humid cold that you would see in the Midwest or even in the East Coast, Northeast coast. So I like to show that in our shortest days of the year, even here in Anchorage, we get down to about 5.5 hours of daylight, which is not all dark all the time. And by mid-March, we're way well above 12 hours of daylight per day, which is really, really nice because you can get out and enjoy lots and lots of winter activities in February and March with those long daylight hours. Now, if you look at June, you guys are going to be here end of June, really like the beginning of July. We're well over 22 hours of daylight, and the sky will never get dark enough while you're here to see the stars. So unfortunately, there is absolutely no chance for you to see the Northern Lights on this trip, which is why I want you to call Jen and book your next trip to Alaska. As soon as you get that piggy bank back full, because coming to Alaska and seeing the Northern Lights, well, first of all, it's not something you have to do in the winter. You can actually start doing that in late August, all the way through mid to late April. So there's only really 3 months of the year that it's absolutely impossible to see the Northern Lights. And that's simply because the sky never gets dark enough to see the stars. But when you look at these average temperatures, 63, 65 is our average temperature in July. And up towards Fairbanks, it's probably going to be closer to about 75 on average in the middle of the summer. But in Denali National Park, because you're at elevation, you're probably still going to be somewhere around those 60s, maybe high 50s, low 60s. That's going to be your average temperature. But I will tell you that those temperatures feel much warmer when the sun is up for 22 hours than they would for you there in Tampa or anywhere else that you come from in the country. So just remember, bring layers. You want to make sure you have layers of clothing. I know Jen's going to talk a little bit about that. You want to have some thermal undergarments. I call them long johns, but like base layer clothing that you can have on. Make sure you bring t-shirts. Tank tops are popular because people, I promise you'll be buying one if you don't bring one. And maybe some zip off pants, so that you can actually have some like, short pants or even shorts, depending on what you like to wear. But people often don't pack light enough clothes and then they get here and they're too hot. So you do want to keep yourself protected from the mosquitoes and things like that too. But bug spray works wonders, and I've been using it my whole life, and I feel perfectly fine. So that's a little bit about our daylight and temperature. Again, you will have every option to watch sunsets for as long as you want while you're in Alaska, because you can watch them for hours and hours. So you'll be coming into the Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport. I don't believe you have anyone coming in through Fairbanks, but that is another option for future trips to Alaska, where you could fly into our interior city of Fairbanks, the Golden Heart City, and then travel southbound from there. So lots more options into Anchorage, however, because we are the largest city and we do have a lot of flights coming in and out of Anchorage daily. Now, I will remind you that these flights come year round. So it is, like I said, gorgeous to visit here in the winter. Our mountains are snow covered, and our flights never get canceled because of snowfall. We land in complete blizzard conditions here in Anchorage. It's because we simply have the equipment needed to clear the runways. And I don't know if any of you have seen the new Ice Airport Alaska show, but they have some pretty amazing equipment that they use to keep these runways clear. And they do land all year long. The only thing I've ever seen close a runway here or close the airport down is volcanic ash. So we do have volcanoes close by that when they erupt, they cause some air havoc. So now, any of those, well, when you come in your first night, or if you're coming in for a couple pre-days, you might be staying here at the Hotel Captain Cook. Now, this hotel is so unique, and it's great because it is a property that Princess normally uses for their cruise tours, and so that's really fantastic. It's by far the nicest property in downtown Anchorage, and it is owned locally by the Hickel family. Now, Wally Hickel was our former governor, and he was here when the state actually became a state in 1959 and before that. In 1964, we had a massive earthquake here in Alaska. It's the largest ever recorded in North America. It was 9.2. I won't talk a whole lot about earthquakes because it seems like every time I talk about it, one of them happens, and Jen will know about that. But we do experience earthquakes here, and any of you that are familiar with that, it's a little bit of an uneasy feeling when it's a good shaker. But our building codes in Anchorage changed after that 1964 earthquake, and they have made it so that the buildings are built very, very safely. Well, people, in order to get people to think, hey, let's Anchorage is going to come back as a city. Wally Hickel decided he was going to build a luxury hotel property in downtown Anchorage. And I tell you, there was some massive devastation in Anchorage, and a lot of devastation throughout the state caused by tsunamis from that giant earthquake. The main problem with that earthquake was that it lasted for 4.5 minutes. And so because it shook so violently for so long, it caused a lot of damage. Well, Wally Hickel said, I want people to know that Anchorage can come back as a city, and we can come back. So I'm going to build a luxury hotel property in downtown Anchorage. So that earthquake happened in 64. In 1965, Wally started trying to find people to invest and give him a loan to build a hotel. He had to end up going to Seattle to get that loan because everyone here thought he was crazy. He built this tower first, Tower 1. And it was so well received that he ended up building the next year, he built Tower 2, and a couple of years later, he built Tower 3. Now at the top of Tower 3, you'll find the Crow's Nest Restaurant, which is a 4-diamond, beautiful restaurant. They have one of the nicest wine cellars, largest wine cellars in the entire city, absolutely amazing. And this is one of only 3 4-diamond restaurants in our entire state. And from that restaurant, you have a 360-degree view all around the city of Anchorage, including on a beautiful clear day, you could see Denali from many of these locations. But the other cool thing about the Hotel Captain Cook, not only that it's locally owned, locally operated, still owned by the Hickel family, but it is also made to mimic or show the voyages of Captain Cook. Now, Cook Inlet is what you see from Anchorage. You can see Cook Inlet comes off the Gulf of Alaska, and then it goes Cook Inlet up to Anchorage, and then you have Knik Arm that goes to Knik Glacier, which you guys will see via helicopter if you do that tour, and then the Turnagain Arm that you guys are going to follow when you're on your way down to Whittier. Now, Captain Cook was one of the first explorers to map these waters of Alaska when he was looking for the Inside Passage. And I could literally talk about this all day, so I got to keep going. But it is so fascinating to me that they built this hotel and they designed the inside after the voyages of Captain Cook. So as you walk through the hotel, you can actually see his voyages and all the way to his demise when he was killed in the Cook Islands or in the Hawaiian Islands. It's pretty interesting. And I think that you'll really enjoy it. When you walk around the hotel, you feel like you're almost like you're in a ship. So it's really cool how it's laid out. And I would encourage you to walk around and look at the different artwork that traces the voyages of Captain James Cook. Now, right across the street from the hotel on the coast right here, you can see you're overlooking Cook Inlet, and they have the Captain Cook Monument. I kind of showed that in that first picture of Anchorage when we were looking from the water towards east in Anchorage. Across the inlet here, I have my cursor on this mountain. That's called Sleeping Lady or Mount Susitna. That is a really cool mountain with a really cool story. And if you want to Google it, Mount Susitna or Sleeping Lady in Alaska, it has a really neat native story that why it was called the Sleeping Lady. But the Hotel Captain Cook is right next to the Captain Cook Monument, and Captain Cook played a huge part in the history of Alaska and the naming of our waterways. In fact, when he was looking for the Northwest Passage, he also found Prince William Sound. Initially, they called it Sandwich Sound after the Earl of Sandwich, and eventually it was changed to Prince William Sound. Now down here, if you see my cursor right here and kind of to the left of this monument, this mountain right here, from different angles in Anchorage, it looks really big, but that is Mount Spur. So that's still a part of the Alaska range, and that is a volcanic mountain that has erupted multiple times in my life. And if you look just to the left of that, that's where the Aleutian Mountains start. So you will be able to see some volcanoes from Anchorage. Now, this next picture, I just pride myself on because I took this just last year. I had a fam and we stayed at the Captain Cook, and this picture was taken on June 6th at 11:30 p.m. So you guys are going to be experiencing something very similar to this, although it'll be still a little bit later. The sun will be setting a little bit farther to the right. But again, this was taken at 11:30 p.m. from my room at the Hotel Captain Cook looking out. I believe I was in Tower 3 in this picture here. So anyway, really interesting that you can get some incredible sunset pictures. And when I was trying to find a picture to put on this PowerPoint, I was like, oh my gosh, which one do I pick? Because there's so many, because it sets for so long. So anyway, I'll keep us going, but there's lots and lots of options for lodging in Alaska. It's not just big hotels, chain hotels. There's little places like this that you're going to get to visit if you go on the helicopter tour with Jen, if you're on the pre-tour. This is the Knik River Lodge. Now they have all these individual cabins. So when you stay at the lodge, there's a main lodge where they have all the dining facilities, and then the helicopter check-in. Alaska Helicopter Tours actually now owns the Knik River Lodge, but these little cabins overlook the Knik River Valley, which is absolutely stunning. So tons of different types of lodging choices throughout Alaska based on, what type of lodging you like, maybe what your budget is. This is a little bit more affordable place to stay. All have their own separate bathrooms and little fireplaces inside. So really cool little Alaskan style cabins. It's kind of a fun way to do it. Now, people come to Alaska, of course, for our seafood. We have famous seafood that's shipped all over the world. Of course, one of the most favorite would be the red king crab or golden king crab that we have. They're huge, giant crab. You will find this on menus all throughout Alaska. I promise you, it won't be hard to find. It might be hard on your pocketbook, but it won't be hard to find on a menu. We do have all sorts of food, though. So if you're not a seafood lover, you're not interested in Alaska, the 5 different species of Alaska salmon or halibut, shrimp or scallops. I mean, lots and lots of seafood options. We do have lots of other options too, including a lot of vegetables and fruits that are grown in Alaska. So when you're looking at menus, oftentimes you'll see this Alaska grown logo. And that means those vegetables were probably grown in the Mat-Su Valley, which is the Matanuska-Susitna Valley, just north of Anchorage. It really is our agricultural center of Alaska. Now, this is where back in the Depression, they actually sent about 200 hard-hit families from the Midwest. They sent them up to the Palmer area, which is in the Mat-Su Valley, and it was basically an experiment to see if it was going to be a good place to start a farming colony. And so some of those original farms are still there, and this is actually where most of our agriculture from the state comes from. The best part about that is the Alaska State Fair at the end of the summer. Now, this cabbage looks big, right? 93.9 pounds. Crazy. It is not our record now. Our record size cabbage in 2018 was 138 pounds. So if you come at the end of September and in through Labor Day, you can actually visit the Alaska State Fair and see these giant vegetables that are grown. And this is really due to the rich soil and the really long, beautiful sunny days that we get out there in the Mat-Su Valley. So another fun thing to put on your bucket list if you want to come to the State Fair. That's also a great time to see the Northern Lights. So keep those notes for yourself if you're coming back. What else do we have a knack for here in Alaska? Well, I would say brewing beer is one of those. We are ranked, I believe it's 8th per capita in number of breweries. We have 13 here in Anchorage, so there's options for brewery tours and things like that. But I know you guys are going to have your welcome dinner at one of our really great breweries downtown. And before that dinner, you're going to walk on down the hill. So here's the Hilton. You guys are at the Captain Cook that's over here on the right. I don't know if you see my cursor there. This is the Alaska Railroad Depot where you guys will pass through the depot when you're on your way down to Whittier to get on your cruise. But for dinner on your welcome night, you guys are actually going to be at the 49th State Brewing Company. And before dinner, you're going to come down here to Ship Creek. That's SHIP. This is where you can actually fish for salmon in downtown Anchorage. Believe it or not, it is the only place in the entire country where you can fish for king salmon right in the heart of a city. It's fun to watch, even if you don't try your hand at fishing, but our member here can rent you, if you're here a day in advance, maybe, and you want to try your hand at fishing yourself, you can just rent everything you need right there at the bait shack and then try your hand at fishing for salmon. So you don't necessarily have to go out on a big long tour or go out to a remote lodge. You can try fishing for salmon in Anchorage. Right next door is the Ulu factory, which I highly recommend visiting if you can get down there during open hours. They have a free trolley from downtown, and they make ulu knives, which are a native knife, but I use mine almost every day. That's on my countertop, and it's just fun to go there and watch them being made. And you know that they're made in Alaska and guaranteed, so it's a really fun place to go visit, the Ulu factory. Now, I promise you'll probably see people pulling salmon out of the river. If you catch one yourself, you can actually have the bait shack clean it, process it, flash freeze it, and then ship it home for you to share with your family and friends when you get home. So if you want to try fishing, ask Jen for some more details. Now, the 49th State Brewery is one of my absolutely favorite places to dine in Anchorage. They have a really incredible menu, great wait staff, 2 different outside dining decks, lots and lots of indoor space, beautiful bar. And on a nice clear day, you can see Denali from this deck looking out to the north. You can also see Sleeping Lady or Mount Susitna there. And this is across the Knik arm of Cook Inlet. So when you're looking north here, you can see the railroad tracks and all this beautiful scenery from your outdoor dining. And again, it's going to be nice and warm. You can see people out there in t-shirts and tank tops, dining even late into the evening. And the great news about that is that you can, again, if you want to stay up a little bit later, you can try and catch those really beautiful pictures of the sunset, because that's about as dark as it's going to get when you're here. Maybe that dark. Now, Mild to the Wild, find your adventure. And why do I say that? I say because there's something for everybody, whether it's like really extreme hiking. Jen and I actually did this hike when she was here, Portage Pass. It was a little intense uphill, but this is from Whittier. I don't know that you guys will have time for that hike, but we have lots and lots of trails throughout Anchorage, including Flat Top Mountain, which is the most hiked mountain in all of Alaska. There is a shuttle that you can take from downtown Anchorage up to the Flat Top parking lot, where you could just enjoy the views from this beautiful paved path, or you can actually do the 3-mile round trip hike all the way to the top of Flat Top Mountain. So if you want to get a nice, good little bit of exercise while you're here, you can give a hike a try. But there's lots and lots of trails throughout Anchorage. And one of the most popular ways to experience our trails, of course, is on bicycle. Now, I've taken out fam people, even some of the people in this picture that hadn't ridden a bike for 20 years, and they have electric assist bikes, all sorts of different types of bikes. So it's really, really easy. Even if you haven't ridden a bike in a long time, you can rent a bike for just a few hours and get out and enjoy the Tony Knowles Coastal Trail. Now, from downtown Anchorage, there again, you see the Hotel Captain Cook. Pablo's bike rental is right next door to the Hotel Captain Cook. So once you get out on this trail, you can go for about 13 miles out to Kincaid Park on a paved trail the whole way, with very, very little incline or hills throughout the trip. So if you have that electric assist, you can actually give yourself a little boost when you need to on an uphill if you get a little tired, or maybe on the way back if you went a little farther than you expected, you can motor yourself back into Anchorage a little bit quicker. So really, really fun way to get out and see Anchorage. Now, again, just back on that slide, you'll see that it follows along the coast. So you're along the water the whole way. And when you look to the north in certain areas where it's clear, you can see Denali on a nice clear day. So again, beautiful trails. And this is actually Jen's first moose she saw when she was in Alaska. The very first day she was here after the earthquake scare the night before, her first night, she got a glimpse of a moose. So we were on our bikes riding along the trail, and all of a sudden we saw someone was like, "Hey, there's a moose up there." And this guy got off his bike, and the moose like kept coming. And so he kind of walked off the trail and waited for the moose to go by. The moose do get a little protective, especially this time of year. This was like late May, early June. It's when all the babies are born. And so these cow moose get very protective of their young. So we just stood back and watched, and Jen took this picture through her binoculars, which I thought was really fun with her camera. But this was her very first moose that she saw. And I'm sure you guys will see plenty of moose while you're in Alaska. Now, these trails are enjoyed year round. You can see here up at Flat Top Mountain, I took a group up snowshoeing. I encourage you, if you come in the winter, to try this, because oftentimes these ladies, in fact, all 5 of them said, no, I don't want to go. And I said, no, you're going. Put on the snowshoes. We got them all on, and pretty soon they dispersed, and it was like herding cats because they were having so much fun. They didn't want to take the snowshoes off. They had such a great time. So again, our trails are used year round. Now, one thing that I highly suggest, if you have just a spare hour while you're in Anchorage, take a trolley tour. Now, the Anchorage trolley tour is a 1-hour tour. Their shortest tour is just a 1-hour tour. And then they have a couple other options too. One that does a few stops. So it's like an 1.5-hour tour. And then I think they have a little bit longer one that really gets into exploring Earthquake Park. Now, it picks up right downtown Anchorage. And as I mentioned, it's a history tour of Anchorage, and how Anchorage got its start really was with the building of the Alaska Railroad. So the Alaska Railroad started being built from Anchorage in 1915, and there was like a tent city down there where they were building the railroad. That's really how Anchorage became a city, was because of Tent City and the building of the railroad. Now, Earthquake Park, they start off at that spot downtown, right in front of our visitor center on 4th and F. And then the trolley goes down by the railroad. And then the next stop they take, after they go by an underground house, which is super cool, they go to Earthquake Park. Now, when you go to Earthquake Park, you can actually see the remnants of the 1964 earthquake, because the ground was shaking so violently that it actually began rolling. And this area was an unstable piece of land. This is where some homes were actually that fell off into the ocean there. And you can actually see how the ground changed, and you can see the rolling of the landscape there. So it's really, really fascinating place to visit. You can also visit Earthquake Park on a bike if you rent it from downtown, and it's really not nearly as far as going all the way to the end of the trail. So Earthquake Park is fascinating. Next place the trolley goes by is Lake Hood. And this is a STOL, which means short takeoff and landing, STOL equipped float plane. So float planes are very popular because they can land on rivers, lakes, streams, lots and lots of places throughout the state of Alaska. In fact, this is probably your most accessible vehicle throughout the state, is a float plane. And Lake Hood is the busiest float plane lake in the entire world. This is an overhead view of Lake Hood and Lake Spenard. The float planes that you see lining all the way around the lake, and then all of these fingers, let me show you. See, there's Anchorage International Airport there. When you look down overhead from those fingers, these are all float planes, and it is so fun to go out there and drive around the lake. So on the trolley tour, you get to drive past these float planes. Now, there's a 20-year wait list to get yourself a float plane spot on Lake Hood. So anyway, I'm planning on getting my float plane rating this summer, and I know I probably won't get a spot on the lake, but my neighbor across the street, his spot is right here, so that's his plane. So again, those float planes are really handy. And if any of you had bear viewing on your list of things to do, I know there's certain places like Ketchikan, other places that you can do that. But if you have extra days in Anchorage and you haven't booked it already, it might be unavailable at this point. But Russ Flying Service and many other companies here in Anchorage do bear viewing trips out to Lake Clark and Katmai National Parks and Chinitna Bay, different places just across the inlet from us, that it's a very easy half-day trip to go bear viewing. How many glaciers are in Alaska? I can't imagine any of you that are coming to Alaska and isn't at the top of your list to see glaciers. I always ask people, and I know your mics aren't on, but I tend to ask people, well, how many glaciers do you think we have in Alaska? And I get like, 37, 110, I get all these answers. Well, scientists say that we have over 100,000 glaciers in Alaska, which is really shocking, but it's also very hard for them to count the exact number, because it's very hard, because this is a glacier and then this is a glacier up here, and then they combine to be one glacier that finally comes down to the ocean. So lots of ways to get out and see glaciers, whether it's from the air, like this picture you see from a fixed wing. Lots of glaciers in Alaska are accessible by foot, so you can actually go with a company and hike on glaciers. This is the Matanuska Glacier. You can take boats to get to glaciers, of course, and you guys are going to be on a big ship that's going to go by Glacier Bay. But these smaller boat tours, Jen actually did this one with me. It's a 26 glacier cruise. You get very, very close to the glacier, and you hear the calving and the cracking of the ice, and it's just really phenomenal. So if you have a chance to do one of these boat tours on another trip to Alaska, or at some point either Kenai Fjords or Prince William Sound, it's absolutely fascinating, and you get a lot closer to the wildlife as well. Now, helicopters are extremely popular because they can land you on glaciers where a fixed wing plane absolutely would not be able to land. And I know this is something that you guys have an option to do if you're arriving early. If you haven't booked it already and you still can, I hope that you absolutely do, because when you do the trip that Jen has planned, you actually get to also experience our state sport. So our state sport is not pickleball, it's actually dog mushing. And one of my favorite parts about the dog mushing kennels is that they socialize the puppies from a very, very, very young age. In fact, sometimes we hold puppies that haven't even opened their eyes. So the kennels typically have puppies at them. They may not have the puppies up on the glacier yet, because they tend to just have the dogs that they're training for races up there. But if you do visit one of the kennels, like say up in Denali at Jeff King's kennel, or another place throughout the state, you're probably going to get to hold some future Iditarod champions. These little puppies are such a treat. So when you do the trip out at the Knik River Lodge and you go up with Alaska helicopter tours, you'll actually get to land on a glacier and try your hand at mushing yourself. Now, they give you some really good instruction on what to do. You can see Jen there listening very intently and filming this guy, telling him how they're going to drive these sleds. But they don't just set you free, because they don't want you to go off the edge of the glacier. And these dogs know what they're doing, but they also really listen to their commands well from their mushers. So they get you all set up, and you have one person mushing, one person sitting, and then you guys switch places throughout the tour. And let me just show you how vast this is, because some of these pictures, it's hard to tell. You see here, there's 3 dog sleds in a row, and they go around a massive area. It's a big snowfield up on top of a glacier. So one of the most exhilarating experiences you'll probably ever do in your life would be landing on a glacier and mushing your own dog sled team. So it's definitely worth it. It's something that you'll never forget. And then after the dog mushing experience, or before, depending on how your tour runs, you will get to do a couple other glacier landings where you land next to these pure glacial melt water pools. You can taste the water. It's that clean. It really, truly is mind blowing. This is a group that Jen was with me last year, and we all got out and, got to mush dogs and then stop by the edge of this lake here. So If you don't have this on your bucket list, I don't know why not. I've had people that are terrified to fly. In fact, Kim right here, this gal, she almost didn't go because she was so terrified. But she said it was one of the best experiences she ever did in her life. So I will highly suggest that to her if you haven't already. There's still time, I hope. Now, something that people might have time for, especially if they're coming in a little bit late and they don't have time to go do the helicopter tour, there's lots and lots of fun things to see and do in downtown Anchorage. Our visitor information center is just beautiful. They're getting ready to start planting these flowers here in May. They'll start putting the flowers out. The city grows them throughout the winter in these beautiful greenhouses, and then they go out and plant them all throughout our city. So it really is stunningly beautiful. And then this visitor information center, I'm actually in this building right now that's behind the center. But our visitor information center has a sod roof, really awesome people inside, volunteers that will talk to you about the history of Alaska and where to go and what to see and what to do. So it's a really great place to stop and just take some pictures and talk to some volunteers about what it is you want to see in downtown or anywhere around South Central. Across the street, there's a free public lands information center. It's really cool. It's got informations, exhibits, park rangers in there that'll talk to you about different public lands. So again, that's right across the street from our log cabin, free to the public. So it's a really great place to visit downtown. Now, if you really are into museums, I absolutely love our Anchorage Museum, and it rivals any museum across the country. It has a lot of different parts to the museum. You could spend an entire day here, over 10,000 years of history under one roof. We have a Smithsonian Arctic Studies exhibit that you see here, a planetarium, Discovery Science Center, Art of the North, an Alaska exhibit that will really blow your mind about the history of Alaska and all the way through the pipeline and the, permanent fund dividend. People always ask us about that. Why do we get paid by the state every year? But you can find out all that information at the Anchorage Museum. And I really do highly suggest that you visit here because it is absolutely 100% worth it. Now, another place that if you were picking between the two, I would have a hard time telling you which one to pick. But if you're more interested in learning about Alaska Native culture and Alaska's Native people, the Alaska Native Heritage Center is also extremely fascinating and fun to visit. It is about a 3 mile from downtown Anchorage, but they do have a free shuttle that comes right outside of our visitor center, right where the trolley picks up. And you can go out to the center, learn about Alaska's Native people, watch them demonstrating Native Olympic games, songs, and dance on the main stage inside. There's also a theater to watch some different films. They have artists inside that'll be selling their Alaska Native artwork and jewelry, and the fans that you see there that dancer is holding, different things like that you buy directly from the Native artists, which I think is really a unique thing to be able to do. Now, outside around the lake, they have 6 replica dwelling sites, so you can see how differently Alaska's Native people had to live based on the region of Alaska that they lived in. This place, I will tell you, you could spend hours here because once you go into these village sites, you get to talk to different Native people from those specific regions, and they talk to you all about, how they lived, what they, who they traded with, what they did to survive. It's fascinating to know that, down in the Aleutian Islands, people lived in underground subterranean houses, whereas farther north, in Alaska, they had like no trees. So they had to, just it's really, really interesting. Down in Southeast, you see this building that you see in this picture. Southeast Alaska, they have these big, big clan houses. You'll see some of these if you do a totem park visit down in Southeast. But these homes housed like entire tribes. So they were huge, but they didn't have trees like this up on the far north or in Western Alaska. So they had to build very, very different types of housing based on where in Alaska the Native people that you're visiting those village sites were from. Again, you get to talk to people that are from those regions and ask questions, and it's really, really interactive. This is just a really cool whalebone display that they have there at the center. This was a whale that washed up on a beach, and they were able to go out and get the bones and reconstruct the skeleton there, and they have it at the Native Heritage Center along the lake outside. Now, if you're interested in gold rush history, there's lots and lots of opportunity in Alaska to learn about that. I don't know that you'll have a chance on this trip to learn a whole lot. In Denali, there's probably some opportunity to do some gold panning. This particular gold mine is the Crow Creek mine, which is located down in Girdwood, or where Alyeska Resort is located. And it is a historic gold mine with 6 historic gold camp buildings. You can even pan for gold right there in the creek. It's actively mined year round by professional miners. So you know that they're still finding gold. And when you do find gold, you get to keep it. That probably goes for anywhere you go gold panning in Alaska. When you pay to, pan for gold, you actually get to keep your gold. If you come back to Alaska on a future trip, I highly suggest visiting also our Golden Heart city of Fairbanks, because it is very, very rich in gold rush history. Now, one of my favorite places, as I mentioned already, is Lake Hood and the Alaska Aviation Museum. Now, aviation has played a huge part in, getting around Alaska, of course, but the history of Alaska, and it still plays such a major role today because there's so many places you cannot get to unless you are in an airplane. But we also have a lot of history in Alaska in aviation with World War II. The Aleutian Islands were actually occupied by the Japanese during World War II. Attu Island was occupied for over 16 months before the US came in and were able to take back the island from the Japanese. It's the only US territory that's ever been occupied by a foreign government. So really, really interesting history here. And you could spend, again, hours at this museum, really looking at bush pilot history. You could do a airplane simulator. There's multiple different buildings and hangars where you can look at different types of airplanes. And they even have the old Merrill Field tower right on the lake. So you can go up into the control tower and you can listen to the live air traffic control of the planes that are taking off and landing right on the lake in front of you. So really, really fun way to see a little bit more and learn a little bit more history about aviation in Alaska. Now I'm almost done, and hopefully we'll have lots of time for questions, but we have walk on the wild side. And what do I mean by this? Well, I have a couple things in mind, but one of them is wildlife. So Anchorage is really, really well known for our moose. In fact, our moose mascot for Visit Anchorage, his name is Seymour of Anchorage. But you are very likely to see moose while you're here in Alaska somewhere. Probably you'll see them in Denali National Park. And depending on where you go in Anchorage, it's very common to see them along that coastal trail or on the trolley tour. That's very also oftentimes they see moose on the trolley tour. This moose this is probably late August or early September. And why I know that is because it has no velvet on its antlers. So these moose, they grow new antlers every year, and they grow bigger every year. And the bigger, the badder the bull, the more girls he gets. So that's kind of their goal, I think, is to grow the biggest rack that they can. But it's really fascinating to see them. You guys are going to have a great time of year to be here because they're going to not just be little nubs. They're going to be, getting to be big antlers by the time you come in July. Now, another popular animal to see in Alaska, of course, is our Dall sheep. Unlike anywhere else, our sheep are pure white. It's a Dall sheep, different than the sheep that you would see in Colorado and the Rocky Mountains. But you'll see these along the Seward Highway oftentimes. So when you're taking the train down to Whittier, look up to your left and they should tell you on the train where, but around Windy Point is where you want to look up and watch the rocks, because you'll see Dall sheep, these big rams, also the ewes and the kids, the babies. Sometimes they come right down to the edge of the road. So if the train sees them, as long as they're on time, they typically stop and let you take some pictures of the sheep along the way. Other animals that we commonly see around Anchorage and Girdwood in this region, of course, are black bears. Now, in Girdwood especially, you are almost guaranteed to see a black bear at some point while you're there. But if you really want guaranteed wildlife, I would suggest visiting our Anchorage Zoo. The Alaska Zoo is located on the hillside in Anchorage. It's set throughout a boreal forest, and it's unlike any zoo I've ever been to anywhere in the world. So people often tell me, wow, I'm not really a fan of zoos, but I went to the Anchorage Zoo and it was really great. They also have a free shuttle from downtown Anchorage. So again, if this is something that you really want to see these Alaskan animals before you get out into the wilds of Alaska and you have a little bit of time, they're open some nights up till 9 p.m., typically in our summer hours by the time you guys get here. This was last year's schedule. But when you get here, they'll likely be open till about 9 p.m. So really great to get out there and see. We don't have any elephants or giraffes. These are all northern climate animals. But I will tell you that they're not all animals that you'll find in Alaska, because we don't have Siberian tigers, but they do love the snow. And in the winter, when you go to the Alaska Zoo, it's really awesome because the animals are out just like loving the temperature, so they are northern climate animals, and it's a really fun place to go see guaranteed wildlife. Now, here's my friend Jen out at the reindeer farm. I don't think this is on your guys' schedule, but if you come in early and you have a couple extra days, this is a really, really affordable tour, $15 per person. That's nothing. And you actually get to touch the reindeer, feed the reindeer. You get to kiss a moose. You can feed a moose right out of your mouth with a carrot. Anyway, the Williams Reindeer Farm is located out in the Palmer area, and one of my absolute favorite places to visit. My kids love it. I've took my whole family out there this year at Christmas, and they were just over the moon. But yeah, you actually get to feed reindeer right out of your hand. Reindeer can't bite you because they only have teeth on one of their jaws. So they actually tickle a little bit when they're eating the food out of your hand. And they also cannot kick you because they have a tendon in the back of their ankle that it keeps them from being able to kick. So when you hear that Christmas song that says up on the housetop, click, 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 or up on the rooftop, click, 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 that's actually true. Reindeer, when they walk, they do make a clicking sound, and it's because of that tendon that's in the back of their foot. So the reindeer farm's a big one to keep on your list for maybe next time if you can't do it this time. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about our sea life, because both you all are probably going to see whales on your cruise, but when you do these smaller glacier cruises, if you have a chance to come back to Alaska and see Kenai Fjords National Park out of Seward, or if you go out of Whittier, you're bound to get much, much closer to the sea life. One of the tours that I suggested in Southeast is the Juneau Whale Watch, and they guarantee that you will see a whale on their tour. It might not be this close to the boat, but they guarantee you're going to see one. The sea otters are one of my absolute favorites. We see these all over South Central Alaska, throughout Whittier. They're everywhere, really beautiful animals, and they have over 1 million hairs per square inch on their body. So that's how they stay warm in these crazy frigid cold waters. In fact, this is why the Russians sold Alaska to the United States, because they thought they were gone. They thought they had hunted them to extinction and there was nothing left in Alaska. Little did they know we had tons and tons of oil and gold beneath the surface. So these sea otters were our saving grace, I think. You also see lots of different types of whales. Of course, this is an orca. It's the largest member of the dolphin family, but people often call it a killer whale. You might see these on your cruise. I imagine you will definitely see them somewhere in Southeast Alaska. They're really, really fun to watch. And of course, seabirds. We have over 210 species of birds that migrate through or call Alaska home throughout the year. And puffins are by far one of my favorite. These are the horned puffins. We also have tufted puffins, and they are different than the Atlantic puffins. So just a little bit about those birds. Now, one of your best chances for seeing wildlife is going to be on your trip into Denali National Park. Now, you are taking a tundra wilderness tour, and I know Jen has talked to a lot of you about that tour, and you won't be going all the way into the park this year because they did have a landslide issue with the road. So they're building a bridge, and that will hopefully be done before next season. So again, another place that you can add to your list to visit again, but you will likely get to an area where you're going to be able to see Denali. Now, this is Denali, the tallest peak in North America, 20,310 feet. And I wish there was a bus on this road where you could see it right now, because how small in the size of it compared to the mountain. It's absolutely stunning. Now, this picture my husband took with his cell phone, and in the very bottom right of your screen, you can see the edge of the bus window. We were sitting in the front seat. This bear we saw from about a mile away, and of course the bus has to stop, and that's Denali in the background right there. That's the peak of the tallest mountain in North America. And this this bear just walked along the road and literally walked right past our bus and just kept walking. It never stopped and looked at us or nothing. So I really hope something like this happens to you while you're in Denali, because it's so amazing to see. The bears in Denali see no benefit from people at all. They've never seen garbage. They've never seen human food. It's so protected, and it's so wild and green and beautiful that you will be very, very surprised that, these bears don't see humans as any kind of reward. They don't see that they're going to be getting anything from you because they've never seen those things before. So again, just enjoy that trip into Denali. You will likely see caribou. There's tons of them out there. You'll likely see moose. Bears. You may get to see wolves and sheep. Sheep are going to be real high up on the mountains, but the wolves tend to be pretty skittish, and if you see them, you're really lucky. But those are the big five. If you're listening for the big five: moose, caribou, grizzly bears, sheep, and wolves. Now, grizzly bears in Denali, this is also one really interesting thing. Grizzly bears are in Denali, but brown bears are coastal. So they're pretty much the same bear. Grizzly bears have developed a hump on the back of their shoulder blades, and that's because they dig for most of their food, for ground squirrels and roots and berries. Whereas coastal bears, which we would call a brown bear, those actually eat more salmon, and they get a lot more high fat food. So they're much, much larger. So grizzly bears are still really big, but brown bears are by far the largest of the two. Now, one of the other things you guys have a chance to do when you're in Denali is this beautiful hike on Horseshoe Lake Trail. This was actually a group of optometrists that I took hiking. It was a real big group, and I took 2 out there that day. Really beautiful location, very, very easy hike, minus the big hill you have to go up at the end. But just give yourself some time to go up it. The water, it's really hard to see in this picture, but the water is so clear. You can see the rocks in the bottom of the lake.
That's not the hill. Tell them that's not the hill.
That is not the hill. That's a landslide. And those young boys were up there, and I kept telling them, you guys better get down. Anyway, their dad let them climb up there, but it's just a little bit of a slough off the edge there. But the Park Service makes sure that this trail is nice and safe. We saw a beaver. He came right up next to us, and it was so fun to watch him. It was just really, really cool. So this is the Horseshoe Lake Trail, and I highly suggest that you do this hike with Jen because it is really beautiful, and the chances of seeing a moose, all sorts of different types of lichen that grows on the trees, really, really neat flora and fauna that you'll see on this trail. It's absolutely stunning. Even in the rain, it's a beautiful trip. Now, this is the Savage River Trail. Now, the shuttle, there is a free shuttle that the Denali State Park, Denali National Park is offering this year from the park entrance. You can take a shuttle, and it's a good, I think it's about 40-minute shuttle ride into Savage Creek or Savage River. And Savage River is where normally in a normal operation year, where as far as people could drive to, it's like mile 19, I believe, of the park road. From there, you have to be on a bus to go farther into the park. But if you go in to hike the Savage Loop Trail, this is part of it. It is so beautiful. And it's a free shuttle, and it's running every 15 minutes at the point when you guys are here. Make sure you give yourself a few hours though, because you want to take the shuttle in, do the loop, and then get back on the shuttle to come out. So again, if you're into hiking, very, very easy terrain. You're not going to have any hills here, really, just really beautiful terrain along Savage River, and one of my favorite hikes in all of Denali. Now, if you're more into the wildlife like this is myself and some of my friends in Denali, where you guys are staying at the Princess Lodge. There is this really cool photo experience that you can do. They give you all these different furs to put on. You have props like guns and bottles and, snowshoes and lanterns and fish and all these things. And you get to take these pictures, and they process the pictures for you and give them to you on a disc and everything. So if you want to do this, it's really fun. I have some of my favorite pictures of me with my best friend and some of my other friends out here. We do this every year when we're in Denali, and it always is such a great time. So that's right there in the Denali Park Village that you guys will be staying at. Now, other activities that you can do in Denali, of course, you can do zip lining and river rafting and Jeep tours. And one of my favorites, of course, is the dog kennel tour. If you want to go visit Jeff King's kennel, it is absolutely amazing to go see how the dogs are trained and learn from a real Iditarod musher. Now, you're going to get on a train there in Denali, and you're going to head south. And the Alaska Railroad is so beautiful. The scenery that you see along the train is really, really stunning. Of course, this is a little bit later in the summer because you can see the leaves have changed. This is probably in September that you're looking here. And then when you get down through Talkeetna, again, you're going to have some great views. Make sure you look behind you from the train because you guys are heading southbound. So Denali is going to be behind you. Make sure you are up and walking around on the train and looking behind you because you're going to see the mountain. If it's out, it's going to be in the back. And oftentimes I've been on the train when I'm like, why aren't they saying anything? The mountain's out right behind us. Everybody turn around. And I'm always walking around the train and talking. You can tell I'm that person that just doesn't shut up. So again, that train, you're going to continue on. So you're going to go right through Anchorage and you're going to continue on down to Whittier. You guys are going straight from Denali down to Whittier to board your ship. But the portion that you do along Turnagain Arm, which is right here next to the Seward Highway, is just absolutely stunning. I mean, again, you're going to see scenery that if you come back, I would highly suggest you take this train down to Seward because it's some of the most stunning scenery you'll see on the entire railroad. Now, of course, when you get down to Whittier, this ship's going to be there waiting for you. I'm not sure if you guys are on the Island Princess, but whatever Princess boat you are on, it's going to be at this exact dock, right at the harbor, right after you come through the tunnel. And when I say the tunnel, we have the longest tunnel in North America that's shared by the railroad and an actual road. So the cars go through on the hour and on the half hour for 15 minutes, and then trains go through the other opposite 15 minutes. So once you get to Whittier, which you can now drive to, but you couldn't when I was a kid, in the late 90s, they opened this tunnel for driving through. They redid it and made it a road. You guys are going to board your Princess cruise there and head south. So I do want to talk a little bit more about what we're going to do in our next session. And that is really kind of focus on other times of the year that you can come to Alaska, because I'm sure once you get a taste of it, you're going to be hooked and you're going to want to come back. This picture was taken in early September, about September 9th. So I promise you, in Anchorage, you can see the Northern Lights starting in mid-August. Now, in order to really get your guarantee on, I would say you probably want to come the last week of August into the first week of September. And bonus there, you get to visit the Alaska State Fair. But as we get into our winter months and you see now there's snow on the mountains, these aurora just get more and more spectacular as you go. So it tends to be September and March are two peak periods for Northern Lights, and that's simply because the sun, the solar flares are more common in those months. But right now we're having some incredible Northern Lights still, even all the way to the beginning of April has been absolutely incredible. So here's another picture just showing you, you can see this is Anchorage, this is the city, these are the city lights. And up at Flat Top Mountain, he's taking pictures of the Northern Lights over the city of Anchorage. So other bonus to coming in the winter, of course, is the Fur-Rondi Festival. And culminates with the Iditarod. So the start of the Iditarod is always the very first Saturday of March, and it starts right in downtown Anchorage. I want you to tune in on May 12th so that you can learn more about a little bit other times of the year. And I hope to see all of you when you're here in Anchorage. I know Jen has invited me to come visit you when you have dinner at the 49th State. So I will do my best to be there on the 4th of July. But with that, I want to say thank you, and I'm going to answer some questions. I'm sorry, I probably rambled on too long, but I hope you all found it very interesting.
I think everybody would be okay with a sleepover, Dawn, so don't you start rambling on. Yeah. So I'm going to unmute you guys, and let me see here. Let's see if we can, there you go. You'll get a little message pop up. And feel free, if you can, just quiet all the noise in the background. If we get some background noise at your house, I'm going to mute you just so it doesn't get on the recording and Dawn's able to hear the questions. But so Dawn, the first thing that Cheryl said is that she has a Bichon poodle too.
Oh. Well, my last dog was a Bichon, purebred Bichon, and he was 16 when he passed last April 30th. So I've been begging my husband begging for a puppy for a year since our little guy passed. And I was in Texas a couple of weeks ago and I bought him. I said, here, honey, look what I brought home. He's forgiven me already.
I was going to say, and her husband's still speaking to her, which is a total So Cheryl also asked, will there be fireworks in Anchorage July 4th viewable from the hotel? I thought that was interesting and I wanted you to answer it for her.
Yeah, so depending on where your room is in the hotel, but it's very close to where the fireworks happen. So they typically do the fireworks down at the ball fields, which is the Mulcahy Stadium, which is where our summer baseball league happens. We have college baseball players from all over the country, Division I baseball players that come up to Alaska and play in the summer baseball league because they play literally midnight sun games, so they can play very, very long hours. So they have them throughout the state, but down at Mulcahy Stadium is typically where they do the 4th of July fireworks. I'll have to look and get back to Jen because they might be doing the fireworks from downtown. The unfortunate thing about fireworks on the 4th of July in Alaska is that you can't see them very well because it's not very dark. So you can see them and it's fun to hear the big bangs and the booms, but there will be a parade downtown on the park strip and all sorts of other things going on. So there will be plenty to see and do for Independence Day.
Thank you.
And also on the park strip, we have a really cool Veterans Memorial. The park strip is the Delaney Park Strip. It's right downtown Anchorage. And it actually was one of the first, it was actually made as a fire break to keep the city of Anchorage from burning down if there ever was a forest fire. But it's really fascinating, interesting place to go visit and take a nice walk.
Yeah, and when she was telling you about Ships Creek and the Ulu factory and where the Alaska Railroad is, what I figured is when on July 5th, you guys are going to be coming in at all different times. Some of you are coming in a little too late for that, but we'll do some type of an organized walk, a little city tour, because now you see after Dawn has showed you everything within that walking area. We're going to walk by the federal building. It was closed during COVID. I wanted to go so bad. I was like, I'm not leaving. I'm standing out front. But there's so many cool things to do in downtown Anchorage that it really is the reason to go back. It's not a pre or post stay. I mean, there's just so much to do there. And day one is when she taught me that, was when we rented my first time on an e-bike ever. And that trail was amazing. And it was the first of probably 40 or 50 moose that I saw throughout my 5 or 6 weeks that I was there. And I'd never seen one before in my life. So I was just, it was amazing. Amazing. But Anchorage, and what a great presentation to show us how much it really has to offer. I mean, there's no question. There's so much to do there. Turnagain Arm, can you tell them a little bit about where the name of Turnagain Arm came from?
Yeah. So when Captain Cook was looking for the Northwest Passage, he came up into Cook Inlet, and then he was like, oh, this has got to be it, because there was these mountains that just go straight up from the water, kind of like what you would see in like some of the fjords of Norway. He came up Turnagain Arm, and he was like, this got to be it. He went to the end, but the water was rushing out so fast, he had to keep turning around. So he would go up Turnagain Arm, and then he would turn around. And so he then thought, well, maybe this isn't no longer the ocean at all. Maybe it's a river. So he called it the River Turnagain. And eventually that was changed into Turnagain Arm. So again, it was Captain Cook looking for the Northwest Passage. And the reason the river, it seemed like a river, is because it has the second largest tidal bore in the world, next to the Bay of Fundy in Nova Scotia. So our tide changes twice a day, up to 36 feet per change. So there's a really cool phenomenon that we see here. It's called a bore tide. And when you come back to Anchorage and you have more time to spend here, you can grab a bore tide schedule from our visitor center and make your way down to Turnagain Arm, and they'll tell you the best places to go watch the bore tide. Sometimes that bore tide's up to 6 feet high. It's one big wave of water that comes rushing in. People go out and surf it and windsurf out there and paddle board on it. Of course, they're professionals and they're wearing dry suits, so they're staying warm. But our water is certainly not water that you would just go swimming in.
That one area, every time we would drive down there for something, when I was down with Dawn, I would literally, I can't even tell you how many, I probably shot 7,000 or 8,000. Bob, I know you're way into photography. I probably shot 7,000 or 8,000 photos when I was there for 6 weeks. So, and a huge number of them were Turnagain Arm, because with the mountains and that water, I mean, this is what makes that just southern area of Anchorage, where she's saying the hiking trails are and things like that. It is breathtaking. And it's so cool, because that's the first glimpse of Alaska you're going to get, is right there, where it's like, and I can already tell you're going to be like, okay, we need to come back here, because there's so many things.
And Turnagain Arm is really special, because a lot of times, unfortunately, when you're here at the beginning of July, probably not, but like early summer and then very late summer, we see beluga whales in Turnagain Arm all the time. And that's because they follow the fish. So they follow the hooligan, which is a small oily fish. They call it a candlefish. The natives did, because they would actually use it as a lamp, because it was so oily they could burn them. But the natives will go out and dip net for the hooligan, and the beluga love the hooligan as well. And then also in August, late August and early September, they'll follow the silver salmon up Turnagain Arm. And so you'll see pods of belugas out there. Sometimes we see 40 or 50 belugas. And when they're not in Turnagain Arm, they are still in Cook Inlet. In fact, I can see them flying in my plane over by, well, we call it the Beluga Power Plant, actually. And it's right where the Susitna River drains into Cook Inlet. If you do a bear viewing trip from Anchorage, hands down, you're probably going to see beluga whales from the air, because they're white. And so when they surface, you just see these white humps coming up in the water, and you wouldn't be seeing an iceberg at that time of year. So it is beluga whales. They don't breach, they don't jump out of the water, but they're really fun to watch.
Now, guys, chat in if you have questions for me. Just chat in the chat box and I'll grab you and you can voice your question to her. But I wanted to tell you about the Alaska helicopter tours, the pictures that she showed you. I've already talked with them. They are standing by. They have 3 different times on July 5th that they will come to our hotel and pick you up to take you on that. I said, I want them to do exactly what I did when I was there. So she said, okay, did you land on the Tidewater Glacier? Did you go up and mush the dog? So that's what they're going to be doing. It's called the Grand Kinnick Tour, basically. And I can give you all the information about that. And if you don't want to do that grand, where they do the 2 landings and mush the dogs, we can just message me and let me know, and I'll get you the information about it. But they will sell out. There's no question. So if it isn't from us, it'll be from someone else. So do your best to let me know right away, and then we'll get with them to get a time held based on when your flight comes in. Okay, anybody got any questions? Joan, there's 3 prices on the helicopter, so let me send it to you because it outlines like what it is, what the price is, and it includes transportation. I had her put it all together for
You
it.
won't regret it. I promise. It'll be one of the most memorable parts of your trip.
Yeah, well, and Kim, the one that she was telling you about, was like, I'm not going. She actually was in tears at the end of it. And we thought, oh, maybe this didn't go well. And she said, I cannot imagine if I missed this. And she got a little certificate that's, showed that she survived her first helicopter ride or something. So she got a little pin, but it was one of those trips where and even Dawn, I looked at a video today from my phone when I was sending you some pictures. That was me walking up the steps with you going, oh my gosh, I think that is the coolest thing I've ever done in my entire life. And she's traveled way all over the world, you guys, far more than me. So it was amazing. Okay, so Beth, I got you, Cheryl, Joan, I'll get you guys some information. And if you guys didn't message me about that, just email me and I'll get it over to you. All right, any other questions for Dawn before we let her go?
This was just the tip of the iceberg. We have, Jen and I did some really fun things, kayaking, and we went down to Homer, and just some beautiful, beautiful things to see. I could talk about the Kenai Peninsula all day long. Next on the 12th, we're going to talk a little bit more about winter, like I said, but winter and other shoulder seasons and different things that you can see and do in Alaska when you come back. But if you think of other questions between now and then, make sure you write those down too, because maybe we can touch on some of those.
Yeah, and that's another great thing. In the subject line of your email, make sure you say question for Dawn next time, and I'll go ahead and start making a list to brief her. Karen, you're asking about how many can be on the helicopter. I think, Dawn, do you remember we have 5?
Yeah, so they can take, it really is all depends on how much you weigh. So just stop eating now. I'm just kidding. They have to do weight and balance, and there's a certain amount, there's a usable load that they can, that they can put in the helicopter. So when you give Jen your weight, when she asks you for your weight for the helicopter, be gracious. Maybe tell her you weigh a little bit more than you think you do, because you're going to be weighed fully clothed with your camera and everything that you're carrying with you. And it doesn't matter to them how much you weigh. They don't care. They just need to know how much weight's going to be on the helicopter. And if you aim low and then you get there, everyone aims low, then they might not be able to put everyone on the helicopter.
Yeah.
So the A stars can fit 4 in the back seat and 2 in the front. So depending on the size of the people, they can fit 6 passengers and a pilot. But I think typically they put like 3 or 4 in the back seat, 3, and then 2 in the front, maybe, or 1. So they can fit multiple, but they don't always. And then the R-44 only holds 3 passengers plus the pilot. So they have 2 different types of helicopters that they use.
And plenty of them, because she said,
yes.
I said, I think I have like 34, and I know everybody's not going to want to go. And she said, oh yeah, it'll just be timing. So we'll have space. So I got all you guys down: Beth, Joan, Cheryl, Karen, Kathleen. I'll send those to you. But Dawn, thank you so much for making time. I know, what time is it there now?
It's just 2:13. So our sun will be up till like 11.
Yeah.
It's okay. I got all day.
I remember, which you guys, they do have room darkening blinds. So yes, you will be able to go to sleep. It won't be bright all the time, because that kind of messes.
And one more warning about the room darkening blinds. When you leave your room in the middle of the day, close your blinds, because the sun beating through the window will make your room really hot. Yeah. So even though you want to see that view, when you're not in your room, just close the blinds, because it'll keep your room cooler.
That's a great tip. Okay. Oh, I wanted to show you these. I brought them just so you can see them. Dawn, you want to tell them about these shoes?
Yeah. So those are like duck boots or Sperry's. Some of you might have those. That would be a great boot to bring along with you, not only because they're nice and light, and you're probably not going to need too much waterproof above your ankle, depending on what you do while you're here. But those are great boots. I wear mine year round. If you have lined ones or unlined ones, those are really, really great to have. And I would say definitely a pair of really comfortable walking shoes, like tennis shoes. And honestly, if you have a pair of flip-flops, you might like to have those in the hotel when you're walking down to get ice or something like that. But tennis shoes, really good, like duck boots like that, or, some sort of a waterproof boot would be a good thing to have. And please, please don't forget your sunglasses and your raincoats.
Definitely a raincoat.
Mostly for the cruise. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Yeah, but and I did tell them it's like 100% chance of rain just because we're headed to that rainforest area, and that's really what we're going to see. So
Yeah, but one of the most spectacular parts about that is just that because of all the rain, it is just so lush and green. It's absolutely gorgeous. And even with the rain, like if you when you're in Ketchikan, there's a chance to go out to Misty Fjords. And oh my gosh, and it's applicably named perfectly because there is just this mist that comes down through these arms. And I mean, it's just stunning. The scenery is absolutely amazing. And I know why people rave about their Alaska cruises, because the scenery is just unparalleled. It's really incredible.
oh, I'm so excited.
I wish I was going to be on the boat with you guys.
I know.
Like, gosh, how do I get on this ship?
That is so true. Okay, guys, nobody has any questions for? Okay, good. Dawn, thank you for making time for us. And we're excited in a couple of weeks to have you back to talk about the other season. Hopefully we'll have dates for our, we're applying for dates to be there for the Iditarod, the opening of the Iditarod and the Mushers banquet, all that kind of thing. So I can't wait for you to tell them all about that.
That's another do not miss, I promise. We never have people disappointed when they come up for Iditarod. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, well, those Northern Lights, and we'll talk about it next class, but I have done so much research between Iceland and Anchorage and why Alaska, and I have learned my lesson. And by the way, just so all of you guys know, I have 15 people flying in tomorrow doing the glacier cruise that she just showed you down in Whittier. So they're doing a cruise that in that whole Prince William Sound area, everything that she was telling you about on those small ships to get up close and personal to the glaciers. And I'm so excited. I keep getting their emails and their text messages, and they're just like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. So I told them to send pictures so we can show you. But that's it for today. Thank you guys for making time to come and post the recording in the next day or so. And we'll see you in just a couple of weeks. The link and the dates are already up on the trip class page, and this recording will be there by Monday. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you guys. Have a great night.
Bye,
Donna, I don't know if you can see the chat, but you're all saying thank you to you too.
Ponchos will work. Yes.
Okay.
Someone asked if ponchos will work.
Yeah, okay. I'll message her just so she knows.
Yeah.